Alright, so today I want to show you some of the gear and equipment that I use down here in my reptile room breeding ball pythons. As a matter of fact, I was getting ready for this video and I thought, alright, I'm just going to grab a few things and put them on this table. And believe it or not, I actually filled this whole table with a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even know that I use so much stuff down here. Some of it is like kind of high-end toys that is not, it's kind of an option, you don't really need it. And some of it is really essential equipment that you need in your everyday option breeding ball pythons. So I thought I'd kind of go through from one end of the table to the other, just kind of give you an idea of what I use here in my reptile room. Some of it might give you some ideas as far as, hey, maybe you need that and you didn't know you need it until you actually see it here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start from one end to the other. And this is the first thing I want to show you. I consider this kind of an essential piece of equipment. This is an infrared temperature gun, which is really awesome. Essentially what you do is you just pull the trigger and it puts out two little red beams, and between those two red dots is the surface temperature of whatever you're pointing at. And let me tell you, for like ambient temperatures and hot spots, this thing is like gold. You definitely want one of these. And kind of the thing I like to do is kind of take the temperature of the floor and the walls and the ceiling, just kind of get an overall temperature distribution in your reptile room. And sometimes it can amaze you what the difference in temperature can be between the floor and the ceiling, even if you have a relatively small reptile room. It's pretty amazing. So I definitely recommend one of these. As a matter of fact, this was when I first started in ball pythons about 5 years ago. I think these were really expensive like 10 years ago. These are like $100, and now you can pick them up. I think you get like 20 bucks or something. As a matter of fact, I'll actually find the links on Amazon and I'll put them in the comments section, or in the kind of the information section underneath the video, so you can kind of get the links and the prices on these. So the other thing you definitely need that I use an F10 Veterinary Disinfectant, and F10 is really hard to find. As a matter of fact, I found it over on Amazon and the price was really super high. So I'm thinking maybe I'll go to something else besides F10. I actually switched to that chlorhexidine for a while, which is kind of an equivalent, but it seems like the chlorhexidine, which is like a blue kind of a colored solution, and you dilute both of them with water so they go really far. But it seems like the F10 was a lot more effective in kind of reducing the smells and cleaning it up a lot better than the chlorhexidine. Although the chlorhexidine, I'd say, is probably what I'm going to go with versus, you know, spending, I think these were like 70 bucks or 80 bucks or something. I think they weren't that expensive when I bought this. And it seems like they disappeared and you couldn't get them anymore. And now they're super expensive. I don't know what's going on with the F10, why you just can't get it at a reasonable price anymore. And then another thing you need is you need a really good spray bottle. And this is just a spray bottle that I bought at my local feed store. And this is what I dilute my F10 in. I dilute it with water and I spray my tubs down with the F10. As a matter of fact, I don't have paper towels here, but I usually spray it down with the diluted F10 and then wipe it down with paper towels, and that's kind of how I clean my tub. And then as far as the tubs, I actually use ARS tubs in my racking system, and I use stacks of deli cups. I use these small disposable deli cups for my hatchling racks, and then I use a bigger cup like this for my bigger ball pythons. This will actually fit the grow out tubs and the ARS 70 series tubs. And actually, as a matter of fact, I bought a whole bunch of these brand new, and I've been washing all of them. I don't buy them anymore. I just wash them and clean them, which is pretty awesome. And let's see, the other thing I use, I actually bring all my water down in little gallon jugs. I actually don't have water down here, which is, I don't know if I kind of have bad luck with water in this house. I get leaky pipes and then everything floods, and I'm like to the point where I'm just gonna carry water. I'm tired of leaky pipes. I'm almost afraid. It's weird. I'm kind of like on a well system where the well water for some reason just eats away at my copper pipes. So I'm thinking about maybe going to some kind of a plastic piping. As a matter of fact, you almost need to go through the whole house and replace all the piping. It's kind of crazy. So another thing I use is hand sanitizer. I know this is kind of hard to find in 2020. As a matter of fact, I bought a whole bunch of this at the beginning of the year, and I still use it usually when I'm done like holding Bobby, or if I'm going in between snakes sometimes, I'll actually use hand sanitizer just to make sure nothing gets transferred, just kind of as a precaution. I don't have any sick snakes or any problems at all, but you know, let me tell you, it's just kind of a peace of mind using hand sanitizer. Another thing that I use quite a bit is I actually have these little temperature probes. This is like a temperature temperature monitor where you can have 2 temperatures with alarms, and then you have these 2 probes, and these are really awesome. I actually have these in my incubator for my snake eggs. I also have them in my freezers for my food and for my frozen rodents. I actually put them in there. As a matter of fact, I just had a problem with one of my freezers. It accidentally got unplugged, and luckily we saved, like, you know, probably thousands of dollars of rodents because I had one of those with an alarm. I actually had a freezer that went out. I bought like a quarter of a cow, quarter of a beef, and I actually lost it all from a freezer going out. And ever since then I was like, all right, I want to buy one of these sensors so I make sure that I don't lose anything in the freezer. Another thing is I actually use fly paper here in my reptile room. Sometimes I get crazy house flies in here, and then I've been going to these little, it's like a sticky trap that I just place them on shelves, and look at all the gnats that I caught on that one. Tons of gnats, look at that, my gnat infestation. So this is kind of part of my battle against the bugs, and it's kind of crazy. You start breeding reptiles, and you're like, you know, you see all these reptile rooms with all this fly paper hanging, and you're like, what is that fly paper? I don't have any problems until you get like fungus gnats or something like that, and then you're like scrambling. And then another thing I use, this is some things for my roaches. I use like a water crystal for the water for my dubia roaches, kind of an off-topic thing. And then I actually use my rodent pellets, kind of the dust left over from my rodent food to feed the roaches. And then I use a little coffee grinder in case I run out of that dust. If the roaches are eating more than the kind of the rodent food, I actually grind up some of the Missouri, it's like a Missouri 6F rodent. And then let me tell you, those roaches, that's all they need is that water and that Missouri 6F, and they'll multiply like crazy. And then another thing I have here, take a look at this. This is my ultrasound machine. It's like a little laptop ultrasound. This is like $1,000 bucks. I think they're like 1,100 bucks now. And this is what I use to look inside my female ball pythons, to look at kind of the egg development and see which ball pythons are gonna lay eggs kind of towards the end of the season. I go through and kind of check them all just to make sure, you know, pretty much at the end of the season, I wanna make sure that I don't have to constantly check on the females for the eggs so I don't miss any. I really wanna catch the eggs as soon as they lay them. And then another thing, let's see, a couple other things. I actually have a Sharpie marker. I actually write on my snake bags usually, the Sharpie marker, and then a pen is good for like marking on your breeding schedules. My screwdriver, I use this quite a bit. As a matter of fact, the ARS rodent cages, the little water nozzle in there, what I do with the screwdriver, I just kind of wedge the little expanded metal onto the little water nozzle so it doesn't pop out and flood the tubs. I've actually had that problem before. And let's see, I use mason jars, and some paper and a printer for picking names for my snakes. I kind of use that, that's kind of fun. And then I use Ziploc baggies. I use a lot of these for if I'm putting rodents in the freezer. I euthanize with CO2, and then I go through a lot of baggies for my rodents. I use press and seal for my snake, the tubs that go in the incubator. I seal the top with the press and seal. And then I actually finally bought some of this. Check this out. You watched my last video on my ultrasound. This is the ultrasound gel. I bought a whole bunch of ultrasound. I think I have enough ultrasound gel for the next 10 years. I didn't realize those things were so big. I actually bought 5 of those tubes. And then I actually have this little, this is what I incubate my snake eggs in. It's a little, it's like a plastic shoe box, and then a little top right here that I use. Essentially what I do is, I didn't bring my vermiculite in, but I put vermiculite, or you can do perlite or anything like that, and then you mix water with your vermiculite or perlite, and then you put the little egg crate right on top of it, and then you put the press and seal on top, and then you incubate for 60 days. And then, of course, I go through a lot of paper because I'm printing out, this is like a breeding schedule. I have all my, everything scheduled. I know exactly what males and what females are paired for the year. And then, you know, on the schedule, after I print it out, I kind of write little notes on the side of that. And then binder clips. I have these binder clips that I go through quite a bit of binder clips. As a matter of fact, I have them on every single tub, and it's kind of like my little binder clips. As a matter of fact, if I'm like going through these snake tubs and I'm replacing the substrate, I'll move the binder clip over to the left until, you know, when they're clean. And then at the end, when I'm all done, I'll put them back in the middle. And then sometimes if I'm feeding like live rodents or something, I'll move them over to the right and then flip them up so I can quickly really look through and make sure I don't miss any live rodents in with my snakes. I rarely use live. I usually try to use like a frozen thawed or a euthanized, but I let me tell you, it's like a little hidden system with my binder clips. You can use binder clips, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put multiple binder clips on a tub and kind of arrange them in different ways, just for kind of remembering which kind of, kind of an organization tool as far as just using binder clips on all the rodent tubs and the snake tubs. It's pretty awesome. And then I also use this label maker. I use this quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I also buy like a magnetic tape. So take a look at this. This is actually like a magnetic tape, a 1/2-inch tape, and then I take the label maker and I print labels. This actually happens to be, this one is my lesser clown female from 2017, and then I just put it right on here. This is real awesome to put these little labels right on there so you know exactly what's going on. And then I go through quite a bit of these. I bought tons and tons of shipping boxes, Reptile shipping boxes, and Bobby wants to jump in there. And these are insulated Reptile shipping boxes. I actually get these from shipyourreptiles.com. And then I also have a whole bunch of snake bags and a bunch of different size of boxes. And let's see, I have my drink here. I always have a drink with me. It's non-alcoholic. And then what I use, this can be kind of handy, especially if you're dealing with rodents. You should probably wear some kind of a respirator. I've actually seen people working with like perlite. Perlite, you definitely do not want to breathe in the dust. You definitely want to keep that out of your, as a matter of fact, I think there's a lot of warnings on like perlite and stuff like that that'll give you lung cancer. So you definitely want to kind of filter that. Here in my room, I actually have an air cleaner that cleans the air really good. So a lot of times I can actually just open the door on one side and kind of have the air go through, and my air cleaner really removes a lot of the dust in the air before I breathe it in. So a lot of times I don't actually use one of those respirators, which is pretty cool. And then a couple other things. I actually use a tong for feeding. You definitely want to use one of these. Sometimes I've gotten pretty close to being bit from some of my snakes, and then I'll go to the tong. Or if I do get bit, then I get kind of scared and I use a tong. Most of the times I don't use the tong, but I do sometimes. And then I have this little like a paint scraper. I use this for like really dirty tubs. Hardly ever use it. Mostly I use this for my reticulated pythons if they're in that really big enclosure, to kind of scrape up the bottom if it gets stuck on. And then let's see what else I have here. I have some like mechanics gloves. They're really thin, but they're pretty tough. I use these for feeding my big reticulated pythons. I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to feeding. Sometimes when they're going crazy and ballistic and they're just like hitting their head on the sides and the ceiling and going crazy for a rat, let me tell you, I'll definitely put on my gloves before I go in there and feed them. It gets kind of hairy sometimes. And then I use, I use a lot of packing tape for my boxes. And then here's another thing that I've been using quite a bit. Everything's kind of falling all over. This is a glue gun. This thing has been through the war. I use this quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I was actually kind of doing a hybrid system where I was gluing a towel to a piece of cardboard for my reticulated pythons with this glue gun. And I don't use it a whole lot, but every now and then you want to glue something just kind of temporarily with like a non-toxic glue, and this works really good. And then another thing I have, let me see if I can pick this up here. This is like I guess it's like a heat lamp for chickens, and I use this for when I thaw out my rodents. What I'll do is I'll put this on I have a little step stool. I'll put this right on the step stool, and then I'll put my rodents under there after they thawed out at room temperature, and I'll do like 5 minutes on one side and maybe 10 minutes on the other side. Get them nice and toasty warm before I feed them. And let me tell you, that is the trick for feeding ball pythons, is getting them warm with a heat lamp. It's pretty awesome. And then let's see what else I have over here. I have this I use quite a bit. This is like a pump up sprayer. Take a look at this. This is what I use for if I have like a really dirty tub and I want to spray it out. I'll actually pump that up. Of course, if you had like a sink and everything, this is kind of what I use is like a 5-gallon bucket and my pump up sprayer versus like a sink. It's kind of hard because I'm crammed in here wall to wall with snake tubs, and most of the times I just spray them out and then wipe them down with with the paper towel. A lot of times I won't use the spray, but sometimes I actually will. As a matter of fact, I use my sprayer most of the time for kind of replenishing the water in my dubia roach colony. You just kind of stick it in there and then fill up the water that way. And then let's see what else I have here. This is another thing that you probably should get. I'd say it's probably an essential, a really good scale, a really good balance, and something to actually put on it so you can put your snakes in there and kind of figure out the weight. And a lot of times you can actually kind of weigh your rodents versus the weight of the snake to kind of get an appropriate size of a rodent. I use that, let me tell you, I use that all the time to kind of monitor how big, you know, if I'm up against the 1,000-gram wall, or try to figure out, you know, how big some of my females are. It's kind of neat, just, you know, kind of keeping track of all that information. And let's see, I have one more thing over here I wanted to show you, and this is what I use for shipping my snakes. So I use those snake boxes, and then I use, take a look at this big old thing. This is butcher paper. I bought this a long time ago, and I use this as the paper in my shipping boxes. That thing is heavy for shipping reptiles. And essentially what I'll do is I'll just kind of crumble it up and put it all around. I don't really like to use newspaper that much. I know a lot of people use newspaper. I'd rather use like a completely ink-free, really clean paper like that. And the cool thing about butcher paper is if you crinkle it up, it really holds together to where, you know, it won't really compact like newspaper would. So you don't, if something kind of gets bounced around where the newspaper kind of gets compact, seems like the butcher paper kind of holds its shape a little bit better. So hopefully this helped you. That is a lot of stuff that I use here in my reptile room. Maybe it'll give you some ideas as far as some of the stuff that you may need now that you know about it, breeding ball pythons. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.